America is the land of opportunity. If you want to make something of yourself in this country, there's little stopping you. But in many other parts of the world, the will and desire to succeed is abundant, but the opportunity to do so isn't. In some of the poorest nations, a mere $50 is enough for an individual to start a business and become successful enough to pull themselves out of poverty. For over 25 years, Opportunity International has provided impoverished people with microloans to start small businesses. Today, the organization helps more than 1 million people in over 28 countries by giving them what we take for granted every day: the opportunity to change their lives.
Opportunity International is the hope for the hopeless.
Opportunity International is in the business of transforming lives, and we use microfinance as the methodology.
Opportunity's mission is to provide access to the working poor to capital to help grow their businesses and to help them work their way out of poverty. And that's an incredibly huge goal.
You may ask yourself, why are some countries rich while others are poor? Economics may hold the answer. Economics is the study of how a country uses its resources to produce goods and services and how they're distributed among various groups and individuals.
Poverty is a very complex issue, and there's a number of great books written on the concept, but most of the time they will tell you it's very multidimensional.
Try and eradicate poverty. You need so many tools. Microfinance is one big tool that you can use, but you need hospitals, you need schools. So if we could even groom our clients to be able to do some of these things, can you imagine? That could help. But poverty is a big thing, and everybody needs to be involved.
In 1776, Adam Smith wrote a book called The Wealth of Nations. He believed that providing the freedom for individuals to own land and keep profits from a business they own were essential to the success of a nation. Not only would people work harder if they had incentives to do so, but the economy would prosper, since these people would create an abundance of resources for all. He called this the invisible hand, or the process that turns self-directed gain into benefits for all.
For example, a client I met with in Uganda started by having a daycare. She expanded that daycare into being a school, and now she also has a catering business, and she's able to use the school compound as a place to host events on a Saturday. So what she's doing, much like any other good business person, is making the most of her assets to be able to get a larger return, and in turn she is employing more people and serving her community.
You may have heard the phrase, give a man a fish and you feed him for a day, teach a man to fish and you feed him for a lifetime. Let's take that a step further. Teach a person to start a fish farm and they will be able to feed a village for a lifetime. That's the secret to economic development that Opportunity International fosters around the world.
Pamela was looking for a business that she could, do. She decided she didn't want to be just selling yam or selling bananas like the other women. She decided to go into the mushroom, business. She learned how to produce mushrooms, so we went to visit, her small mushroom production thing by, her house. She provides employment to 3 other people. But again, that alone would be significant because she is feeding her family, she is sending her husband to school, and she is providing employment to 3 people. Impressive story, but even more impressive to me again was Pamela told us she had trained over 100 other Ghanaians in the mushroom production skills, and they had their own small shacks where they were producing mushrooms.
What we're talking about here is free market capitalism. Capitalism is an economic system where the factors of production and distribution are privately owned and operated for profit. Capitalism has led to much of the world's wealth creation and is the foundation of the U.S. economic system. Free market capitalism only works when people have four basic rights: the right to own property, the right to own a business and keep its profits, the freedom to compete with any other business, and the freedom to work wherever you want.
Now, obviously, having all of such rights would be very, very helpful, for the people that we are trying to serve, to the extent that you don't have a government coming to interfere or to prevent, an individual from achieving the maximum of his or her God-given potential. That obviously is great. Unfortunately, not all of the countries will allow people to enjoy all of those rights.
We have recently started working with some folks and the government to work on some land title issues to help accelerate that. Because in the end, you do need to also have the opportunity to buy and own your land, or the equity you've built up, the business you've built up, whether it's a farm or whether it's the restaurant, can all of a sudden disappear on a whim.
So how do free markets work? Basically, the decisions about what to produce, how much to produce, and at what price are determined by buyers and sellers negotiating for goods and services, or in other words, the forces of supply and demand. Supply is how much product a manufacturer is willing to sell at different prices. Demand is how much buyers are willing to purchase at different prices. Where the supply and demand curves cross on the graph is the equilibrium point, also known as the market price, or the price determined by supply and demand.
Opportunity International is really effective at helping to grow a free market economy. You are in a situation where you have interested, eager, talented business people that are looking to find a way to grow their business. We are providing access to loans so that they then can grow that business, and then those businesses in turn hopefully grow, and that community over time becomes more self-sufficient and sustainable.
In countries that don't have free markets, businesses have no way of knowing what to produce and in what amounts. The government decides, but is often wrong, which leads to large shortages or surpluses. Another type of economic system is socialism, which is based on the premise that most basic businesses should be owned by the government so that profits can be distributed among the people. Socialist economies may have more social equality, free education, and health care, but they also have much higher taxes, which means much of the incentive to work harder is taken away. Brain drain often results as many of the country's best and brightest people leave to other countries where their talents earn them more money.
In that 2 to 8 week period where we train them, it is very important because that is when we offer them training in financial management, business skills, let them understand the importance of saving.
From there, they'll then qualify for their loan, they'll understand what the loan requirements are, and they will continue to meet for each week of their loan cycle, continuing to get business and personal training so that they can be better business owners. That training then transcends to these women and these men being more effective business leaders, and then passing that training on to their own staff and to their own family members.
Communism, on the other hand, is a system where the government makes almost all the economic decisions and owns almost all the factors of production. Human rights often suffers. Plus, without the natural resources of supply and demand, shortages of basic needs like food, clothing, and shelter are common. These days, the trend around the world is towards mixed economies, which are a combination of free market economies and command economies. In mixed economies, some of the allocation of resources is made by the government and some by free markets. The United States is actually a mixed economy. Let's take a moment to talk more about the U.S. economic system. There are 3 indicators of economic conditions: GDP, or gross domestic product, the unemployment rate, and price indexes, which measure the levels of inflation or deflation. When you compare these indicators to those of impoverished nations, the differences are staggering.
We have around 3 billion people living under $2 with $2 a day, or less. We have 1 billion people, around the world, globally, living on $1 or less a day. Okay, so that's one, statistic that we could share. The other is that you would have countries, depending again on which continents you're talking about. So Africa and Latin America, to some extent, where per capita GDP could be as little as $140, for instance, in the case of my country. It's very low. So take $140, compare it with the U.S. The U.S. is what? 30, 40,000? I don't know what it is. So you compare, you can see that the gap is huge. You can't, even compare.
Even with all of our wealth, our economy rises and falls. These fluctuations are known as the business cycle and has 4 cycles, which are boom, or when business is booming, recession, which is 2 or more quarters of GDP decline, depression, which is a severe recession, and recovery, which is when the economy stabilizes and begins to grow again. In a mixed economy like ours, the government uses fiscal policy to try to keep the economy stable by increasing or decreasing spending or taxes. The government also uses monetary policy to manage the supply of money and control interest rates. The Federal Reserve controls how much money is available to businesses in order to speed up or slow down the growth of the economy. So it's easy to understand how our economy has flourished in good economic times and bad. It's also easy to understand how important Opportunity International's mission is to create the same type of economic development in countries where it currently doesn't exist. The key to successful economies is freedom, and the result of freedom is the opportunity for all to have a better life.
All you need is people with a mindset to be able to do it, people willing to try at least, because my experience with the poor is that when you give them money, they want to pay back. They just want the opportunity for somebody to trust them.
We are in the midst of a major campaign to expand our efforts in Africa with the goal by 2015 to mobilize $1 billion to benefit 100 million working poor individuals and families in that continent.
If we can start thinking already about not just ourselves and our future and our careers, what can we do for this person, next to me or in some other country who really has nowhere to turn, who is really suffering. And here I am equipped with all kinds of maybe skills that could benefit. What can I do to make a difference?